can be only one podcast and may it be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks, I'm Matt.
And I'm Wes.
Back, part 2.
Part 2.
Dark Side of the Ring.
The third season.
The third season, which was the biggest season by far. First season, I think, only had like 7 episodes or something. And then the next one had 12, and this one had tons more, 18 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's good. It tells that they're gathering steam and getting approved for larger and larger seasons. Next up was the Dynamite Kid.
Good story.
That was a great story. What all do you know about the Dynamite Kid?
I knew Dynamite came up in England and started pretty young. Was a tough kid. And
small wrestler.
Small guy.
Back in the day where bigger was better.
5'7", probably 145 pounds when he started.
Right.
When he was at his peak in the WWF, he was probably 5'7" and 230.
Yeah. And to be a small wrestler, you really had to work harder than twice as hard as any of the bigger guys.
Sure. To
even get noticed, because that was not seen back then. In a way, Vince is still bigger is better in his head. So I did, a little sad.
Very sad
about how broken his body was. I mean, just all that. He had to do it to keep the limelight.
High impact.
Sacrifice everything. I mean, you talk about throw your health, throw your body, everything to the wind, just for those moments, and then become a broken down. I mean, body just collapsed.
Right.
Fell apart on itself. Really,
and
tragic.
It's kind of a tragic figure too because of the way he handled himself.
Exactly.
In the world of around those guys, and he was a dirty kind of a jerk, and in a way he got what was coming to him from Jock.
He did. It was strange. It was wild that his daughter, the story at the end, his daughter reached out to him and he didn't know why she'd come.
Right.
Like he was, why you want to come see me? That was kind of sad to think about that. Like he's like, well, he knew. I'm by myself. It's one of those. Ty Cobb was a baseball player back in the day. Excuse me. Dark side of baseball.
What?
And Ty Cobb played the game rough, tumble, no apologies, bit, spit, cheat, whatever. Cleat people all the time. One of the most hated players in the game at the time. As he was old, didn't have a single friend, and knew why. Wasn't regretting it, and it felt like that the Dynamite Kid was the same way too. Just kind of like, oh well, that's what I get. Be alone. I deserve to be alone.
Right.
And his daughter kind of changed things, or at least that's what they said in the documentary.
Once again,
changed
the narrative.
Well, yeah. I mean, we talk about how it always has to add sad. They tried to put a bow on this with establishing. I don't think they portrayed him as the hero or anti-hero or something like that the whole time, but they did try to give it a little bow at the end.
Sure.
That he had connected with his daughter, which I think so.
No,
it says a good thing though. And then of course, this is the one that kind of started me on the series, was Plane Ride from Hell. We've talked about this one before, the fallout from it. We've talked about it on the last episode about how Jim Ross kind of regrets it, how the angle was skewed there. But there's no doubt about it in my mind. This is probably the most popular episode of the whole series.
I think so, because it highlights one of the biggest names in the business ever.
Yeah, and everyone tuned into this one episode, and they haven't watched the other ones. It's probably their ratings high here.
I would say so.
I would assume. Based off something that's been talked about several times before, I guess. I'd never heard about this. I knew about the time when it happened.
Right.
And I knew about... I knew the story that something had happened at the European pay-per-view, and Scott Hall was no longer after being there and then being fired because he was on. I think he was supposed to wrestle or do something.
I just think the whole thing where they highlight the fact that they've got they chartered a private plane and they drank.
It was on the tarmac. It'd been stuck there for hours.
I mean. If anybody's been stuck on a plane, it's a pretty miserable feeling.
No,
because it's terrible.
You
basically you're held captive. Lack of a
There's
better term.
nothing to do. There's literally nothing to do.
Right, other than get antsy.
Yeah. So you may as well drink it up.
Correct. So those guys were
Start getting
trying to
crazy.
take the edge off because they didn't think they were going to be sitting there 7 hours. They probably thought,
Yeah.
well, we'll be here for 45 minutes,
Yeah.
hour or two.
Hour. And we'll complain about it later on when we get off the plane.
Right.
Not,
Yeah, I'll be so drunk when we finally take off.
I won't know.
Right. And then they're so drunk and they're still sitting there.
Yeah.
So when they finally get in the air, they are beyond gone.
Yeah. They're cooked at
Yeah.
this point. Everyone is cooked. We have cut off ponytails. We have Scott Hall basically trying to kill himself in a way.
Well, I think the biggest thing that obviously the big takeaway was, Scott Hall, Dustin Rhodes,
All right.
and
Yeah.
Angle Brock and Henning,
Right.
and then of course Nate.
Yeah, the H. The story goes where Vince was on the plane, but there are a lot of people have said, well, they indicated that Vince was on the plane, but everyone has denied
Well,
that Vince was not there.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows?
Oh, no one knows. Okay.
Well,
so that's
I'm
still up-
saying, you can get two stories. They've had a couple of these plane rides from overseas that turn into Animal House. So,
Hey,
what if story's good, you might as well even make it better. Oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, Vince was there. He wouldn't do anything about it. It's like, that's why Vince has people that work for him. It's not Vince's job.
yeah, it's not Vince's job to babysit everyone.
It's
Yeah.
not that's an easy out is to blame Vince, but it wasn't Vince. It's kind of like Jim Ross said, yeah, it was my job. I probably could have done a better job.
Yeah.
But you're putting everybody in situations they aren't prepared for.
I thought Jim Ross handled the interview well. I thought he did.
I did too.
I don't think he was, well, that just me. I just thought he came out honest, apologetic, and just said, but guys, what do you expect? I can't sit there and hold their hand. And he's right. You can't.
I mean, obviously he came back and people did lose their jobs shortly thereafter. And
he made all the hard cuts, hard decisions, and
like he said about Flair, behavior like that has been long documented, and
he just told it how it was.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that kind of behavior is right.
He wasn't saying that either.
I'm just saying that it's been documented before.
Yeah. A-list, man. Yeah. A-listers. Yeah, that's the thing. Okay, so Plane Ride from Hell we've talked about. Double Life of Chris Canyon. True story, I always hated him as a wrestler. I did not think he was that good. I hated the who is better than Canyon. Everyone loved it, I guess. I was one of them. I was like,
If you can remember it, it worked, good or bad. That's kind of the way this business works.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
When I came into wrestling, he was part of Raven's flock, and usually had Billy Kidman on his shoulders as Raven's flock or something like that. Someone's carrying Billy Kidman around. But he was part of the Raven flock, and then when they all kind of broke out on their own, it felt like he was trying too hard to establish his own character, to me.
Well, yeah, I think
Where Saturn had a great storyline, then they didn't know what to do with him.
Well, but I mean, he was Mortis first.
Right, and see, I didn't even know this. I didn't know about Mortis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Do you have?
I'm just saying. I think that to me that was the best character.
Okay. And see, I wasn't around for that.
I'm not saying that storyline was the best.
Right.
For anybody vomits. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I thought his character out of the three guys that were in the Blood Runs Cold or whatever that storyline was called. I thought the Mortis character was good enough. I mean, you had a bunch of guys in masks. You didn't need to take the mask off him.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They said that it stopped being cartoony and more realistic, so he had to change. Isn't that right?
Well,
but I didn't feel that was cartoony.
Well, I think that storyline was so poorly done. I think you could have taken those other guys out and left him, and he could have been a giant luchador to that extent, but could have still maintained. There's been masked guys that were stars. You can't blame it on a mask.
No, you can't, because Kane,
Bingo.
for one,
It's how you book 'em.
or it's how they go. The Undertaker was the Undertaker.
Correct.
I mean, he didn't change that much, and
Right.
I mean, it went beyond just play. He was back in a different era. He started in a different era and then kept it. So it depends. You're right. It depends on how it's presented.
Yeah, exactly.
Mick Foley's, different personas.
Sure.
Depends on how they're perspective. So, yeah. So there's a double life of Chris Canyon.
I thought the most disturbing thing was some of the stories that James Vandenberg told about just how aloof he was. And I thought that when he was on Stern and he went on his rant and Cena and Flair both called in and kind of just said, man, you're just not that good. You're not here because you're not good enough. For that to be broadcast where all of your peers kind of hear that, and you have the general public where you're fans, and you hear these guys that are very open and honest go, you're not on the road with us because
you're not good.
Yeah, you're not a
quality.
major league talent. You work Saturdays and Sundays and county fairs and stuff.
It's a big one.
Yeah,
so they showed that clip.
Right.
In the documentary.
I thought that was probably the most humanizing or dehumanizing, however you'd want to look at it.
No. Moment for a person.
Where you, like you said, Flair, like what anybody thinks about him, this is a guy that has been in the business a long time and has wrestled basically everybody, and a lot of people have looked up to Flair. And
obviously this is a guy who didn't have a lot of, worked with wrestlers. He went to that guy's little hometown area and said, "Yeah, you beat me. It's you're the hero here."
Right.
So take a fall for someone. That's nice. Shows you're not about all ego.
Right.
I love the manager.
James Vandenberg.
I loved his account of everything, which was interesting.
He looks like Ming the Merciless.
But he was very interesting.
Yeah, he's a character. Very good. He was he's done a lot of other stuff. He was in ECW. He was in TNA. He's always been good.
Yeah, no. So
he should be in the business.
It was even though I didn't care. I never cared for the wrestler back then. I still found the episode interesting.
Right. Yeah, I think the humanizing side of this guy. You talked about him not being able to find a character. It's because he had a lot of identity crisis just overall.
What did you think of Chris Canyon as a wrestler? Any good?
Yeah, I thought he was really
You
talented.
enjoyed him, okay.
Yeah, I think that they dropped the ball with him personally.
Oh, okay. So you agree that creative just wasn't behind him then?
I think that if they would have kept him Mortis, they could have built him into something better. And you could have altered that character where he didn't have to have a staff walk into the ring in a cape, but he could have just been a killer with that mask on.
A lot of these characters did mature and change with the times and be fine. But at the same time, you had, who was it, Boogeyman back in the day who did
awful.
the voodoo. But the thing is, though, people were fine with that. People found the Boogeyman.
Right, exactly.
So
it's the narrative.
It is. It's the narrative and how it's presented and how it goes. So there's ways you could have, like you said, morphed Mortis into something a little bit slightly different, stay true to his base character, but get rid of all the cape, maybe the staff later on. He just stops coming out with it.
Yeah.
And just keeps wrestling as Mortis, and Kane's, persona changed a lot over time.
I think, he was definitely good enough in the ring, and James Vandenberg was more than good enough on a mic.
Oh, yeah. Made for a good team.
I just think that he got lost in the shuffle of WCW, which a lot of guys did, because, when you're not ready to be number one and you become number one, if you're not ready to hit the top of the hill, you'll slide down quick.
Yeah, true. All right. Next one was Blood and Wire, Onito's FMW.
Mm-hmm.
Never even knew about this. Was really surprised, and it was pretty good.
Yeah, we had a bootleg tape in the late 90s where it was a lot of that deathmatch stuff, but it was ICP, Insane Clown Posse, where they were doing the commentary on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, if anybody's ever watched Stranglemania from back in the day, that was my introduction to Onita and all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And this is back in the, would you say early days of deathmatch would be him?
Yeah, I would definitely think so.
Yeah, because that's the first thing you started seeing about it. Seemed like that to me, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And he was he was bigger than Hulk Hogan.
Well,
in his area, huh?
Controlling the narrative.
Oh, really? So no.
I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying.
Now, obviously not
we're
worldwide.
not Japan.
Not worldwide.
Right.
But
so
you think
can't
that was
say I'm as big as Hulk Hogan.
Okay. All right. I don't know.
Right.
All I know is from what it tells me.
Yeah, he could say I was as big as Harley Race or in Japan, or I was as big as but you can't compare yourself to Hogan.
Okay. They had him on there though. Was he the one that compared himself to Hogan, or well, no, never mind. The episode kind of hinted at that.
Right. I mean, I think that he was a major player.
Well, you had a bunch of people talking about Mick Foley,
sure,
like Terry Funk. Terry Funk's story was pretty funny.
Funk is legend, a treasure.
Yeah, he is. He is. I'm glad he was old back when I first saw him wrestling, but he still had it in him. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's Terry. He's the Funkster. So yeah, that one I found interesting. I didn't know they'd exaggerated about that though.
Well, I'm not saying, and somebody can argue with me. I'm not king of the deathmatch knowledge either. I'm just saying that the worst thing you can compare yourself to is the biggest thing possible.
It's true.
You know, I mean,
true.
I think that kind of alienates a lot of people.
Well, there's a lot of wrestlers on this show that say they were the best that there ever was, that there ever is, and there ever will be. I'm the best wrestler there.
And it's a contrived business where people agree to do things. So it's hard to say you're the best if everybody agrees that we're going. Well, yeah,
Who would you say is the best, the apex wrestler of all time?
Ooh. Man, that's a tough question. I mean, I think everybody would say Flair probably first.
Flair. Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, definitely well earned.
I mean, I had a discussion with Heath Futch. If you compare the first 10 WrestleManias, who was a bigger attraction out of those first 10, Hogan or Savage? Who had the more impactful match? Who had look at things that way? Savage is very close, if not bigger than Hogan, in my opinion. In my opinion, from the wrestling side of it, not worldwide selling juice boxes.
No, I know what you mean. Because as talent, match, persona goes, who didn't want to be the Macho Man? Who didn't want to fly off the top ring with the elbow? He just seemed like he could do everything. He could do it all.
Right.
Big guy with quick moves.
Yeah.
You know, leg drop ain't that interesting.
Yeah, just wag that finger.
You know, wagging the finger.
I'll punch you 3
shaking
times.
the head.
Yep.
Electrifying, pumping your arms.
I'm going to drop that thermos on you if I pin you the opposite way and you're not going to breathe.
There you go. Okay. All right. Moving on. Bikers, Bombs, and Bedlam, the Johnny K9 story. Never knew who this was. Thought this was an excellent episode. Mainly because of Jim Cornette, of course, coming in. But they had video footage of him back in was it Mid-South Wrestling?
Smoky Mountain.
Excuse me, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And that was interesting. They talked about the broken bottle story, which is hilarious. Then it shows them just goofing off in someone's backyard. Him and Jim Cornette just laughing about the bottle story. He's openly, they just show him goofing off, like singing at the rock band concert and just being a clown, and everyone's talking. Chris Jericho's story about him being his roommate, it being ice cold in the dead of winter, and he's wearing a muscle tee and shorts and just coming on in, but he was built like a boom, like Jim Cornette saw him, was like, who is this guy? Made him to a big character, and when he had to cut him, guy didn't have any, didn't get mad, was just a happy-go-lucky guy. You talk about two sides of the coin. And then on the next hand, he's in charge of a biker gang for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
Hustling money.
That Canadian mafia
cops,
again.
The mafia, yeah. But it was funny to hear how they kept going, hey, I think your buddy Johnny K9's in the news. And it's like, no, that's not him. It is him. Wait, what? And it's like you talk about, did he kill a man? The FBI says yes. We just didn't have all the evidence to convict. And then you have other people going, nah, that's just trumped up. What do you think of? First off, did you know about him prior to this episode?
I knew a little bit about him, just from the Smoky Mountain thing, and I read Jericho's first book, which is probably one of the best wrestling books if you haven't read it. That and the Foley
I've
book.
never read Chris Jericho's. I've read a lot of them, but I've not read Chris Jericho's.
He has a chapter in there called Hot Dogs and Orange Juice. And I saw Jericho in Vegas at a Kiss show, and I just walked up to him and said, "Hot dogs and orange juice," and just walked off. Because I thought the title of that chapter is so incredible. Anyway.
I'll have to, what's it called?
Lion's Tail.
Lion's Tail. I'll have to get that.
Anyway, that was my introduction to him because Jericho talked about him in that book. So
yeah,
but yeah, I thought it was a good story. Once again, you're taking characters that are not huge, even C-list, but wrestlers are pretty interesting guys. Anybody that's in a profession that is artistic, and I think wrestling is artistic. Anybody, man or woman, they're interesting characters. These are not people that are made to go to work 9 to 5 every day.
This isn't your run-of-the-mill average Joe coming into a wrestling ring. You're right about that.
It's kind of like guys that come out of the military and they don't know what to do because they've just been.
They have a different character about them. They're two
different people all the time.
Yeah, but that was really wild that no one could believe he was this guy. And when you see the footage of him, you're thinking the same thing too. And I love it. Like again, that backyard video shows him laughing with Jim Carney. He's like, "Hey Jim, you want me to do another commercial?" And tries to break his head and then laughs because he's making fun of himself.
Yeah.
Where later on, he looks like he would break someone's legs if they laughed at him. And it's like two different worlds and two different personas that he had.
Well, yeah, I think that
easy going with. Go ahead.
I think that there's a certain camaraderie around those guys, and they have always talked about that. There was a brotherhood, so they were that way around each other, but they were totally different outside of those four walls.
Okay, is it called? Let me see. A Lion's Tail Around the World in Spandex?
Correct.
Okay. Let me get that. I'm gonna read that. Serious.
Yeah. Well, I recommend it.
Say what?
I do recommend it. I'm not saying it's as good as Foley's first book, but
oh my gosh, Foley's first book it's
pretty damn good.
Just incredible. Just incredible. I've read his, I've read Triple H's, I've read The Rock's, I've read a few others too, but I missed Chris Jericho's, but I should go back and try that out. But you're right, nothing is beat. What was it? Was it Have a Nice Day?
Mm-hmm.
It's great. That's the biggest one too.
Yeah.
That's a thick book, but it's engaging the whole way through.
Yeah, well, both of those guys wrote their own book, so.
Who?
Jericho and Foley.
Oh, okay, so Jericho wrote this, wasn't? Yeah, because the other ones are kind of bland and generic, and you can tell they're just. To be honest, to be fair, they even say written by or.
Sure, yeah, they've got an author,
but it just doesn't feel as real as.
It's not as artistic.
Mickey
like
Foley's did. Yeah.
Mickey Foley.
A robin peeking out of an eagle's nest was Al Snow and the. That's just great, man.
I'm glad that's your takeaway from that book.
There's a lot of takeaways.
My favorite takeaway from the Foley book that's odd is where he's talking about wrestling in Dallas, and he's wrestling the babyface, and the babyface slaps his hands on the mat and just fires up like. And it's if you've ever seen that in Southern wrestling, to read that, you can see it in your head. I know that's so random, but I love that part of his book. Because it's perfect.
It is. It's great. Okay, well now I'm really excited to read A Lion's Tail then, because I like that. Number 12 is The Many Faces of Luna Vachon. I knew Luna. I knew Luna as a wrestler. Didn't know half the things about her and everything, about how she got into it, how she got into her character. I knew she was with Gangrel back in the day, and I thought she looked hideous. That's done on purpose.
Sure.
Done on purpose. And I didn't know So what are your thoughts first on Luna? It was nice to see Gangrel. Didn't know he was still around.
I thought the story was really good. I think that it once again highlighted the puppy mill that Luna came out of with
again the fabulous Moolah.
Yeah, with Moolah.
It comes back into the story.
Yeah, I think that I really like the fact that they showed the ECW match with Stevie Richards, because so much of what ECW did, other companies started doing. But, I mean, she was a woman defeating a guy in a male sport. Mm-hmm. And I thought she looked great there. I mean, they didn't have her all. She just looked like she could have been in White Zombie. I mean, she just looked like a badass.
Oh, yeah, she did.
I think that that's where they missed the boat with Luna. They shouldn't have made her look like a DC villain. Just let her come out there with a mohawk and
do her thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's someone that she's so creative on her own. Just give her the story arc and she'll fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I think
she's smart enough to build her own character. She doesn't need help.
If Luna was in the business now, she'd be a huge star.
Okay. No, I agree with that.
If she would have been born 20 years later.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. All right. Next one is Extreme and Obscene, Rob Black's XPW. Didn't even know about it. Thought this episode was hilarious. Did you ever?
I knew about it. I used to read a dirt sheet back in the day. So you have Meltzer's sheet, and you have the Torch, which is Keller's. But there used to be something that came out of Buffalo called the Wrestling Tribune that we used to get back in the day in the 90s. And I can remember reading about XPW because we couldn't even get it around here, even on satellite, about the situation with him cutting that kid's finger off for banging his wife or his girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember reading that, and I was thinking, God, this is...
What was he called? The Messiah.
The Messiah.
Yeah. Dang.
Yeah, I remember reading that and just going, man, this is ridiculous.
Yes, it was. And all the things that went on. And that was, I believe, New Jack was in that one.
Sure.
Talked about it, and that's where they did the In Memory Of or whatever. Mm-hmm. Didn't they do that at the end of that episode? But, yeah, because when this had already aired, he had already passed away. So they aired it with him. I was like, oh. I was thinking, wait a minute, how'd they get... Oh, this is filmed before all this, duh.
Sure.
But, yeah, interesting. Talked about the extreme stuff they did, the kind of wrestling and porn. Who knew that they went hand in hand?
I did.
But it was an interesting story. I felt like this one in, what was the other one? UFW or what was it called?
UWF.
UWF. Those were just crazy.
Well, it highlights people that are willing to put their money up to run a business. You got to be quite a character.
Yes, you have to be a character yourself to open up your own business like this. You got to be just as crazy as the wrestlers who you employ.
Yeah, I mean, there's, if you went down the list and you said the major players in the wrestling business from 2020 to 1990, look at those promoters. Cornette's one of them. I mean, all these guys, they're interesting people.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are indeed. All right, finally, that gives us to our last one here, which is how they ended their season with the Steroid Trials. This is something that was highly publicized.
Highly
publicized, and has been talked about on several different occasions, podcasts and whatnot. Before going into this, I knew the gist of what had gone on and everything. I wasn't watching wrestling back then, but this was news that you remembered about going through and everything. And this one was my first deep dive into what happened. How accurately did they portray it, Wes?
I think that talking to Jerry McDevitt, I think added a lot of it because Vince has had him for years, and he is...
Boy, he was an interesting character too to talk to. The lawyer.
Yeah, he's pretty sharp. He has gotten Vince out of a lot of stuff.
Yes, he has.
The whole Owen situation, Benoit, Jerry McDivitt he is the Messiah.
As Jim Ross said, if I had one call and I was in trouble,
Yeah.
and I had the money,
Yeah.
he said I would hire the best lawyer in the world.
I definitely think that they went after Vince in a very...
They did. It became their own downfall because they got a little bit too hungry for blood, and then ended up
It became too personal. It was not...
Yeah, I agree.
I think the biggest thing was, do we have dirty professional doctors, which you can read about every day on your in your own town? I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yep.
That guy was just a fan, which a lot of doctors are, and he got carried away.
Mm-hmm.
And steroids at that point were not Schedule 4, which I believe they are, which is pretty ridiculous, but that's another subject. But I thought that they definitely made it come across that it was pretty ridiculous at the effort that they put into that. And a lot of wrestlers have done shoot interviews. Honky Tonk Man did one talking about being deposed by them, and them kind of almost bullying him into when they thought they wanted him to be there, and the government does not come across well in these things.
No.
At all.
They ain't coming prepared for what they were going to get.
Not money well spent on their account. We could definitely use...
it wasn't. And there was a lot of money spent.
A lot of federal money that was just wasted on this. It's like, what was the point?
It was there. Well, I think they got it right in the documentary. It was a grandstanding case, something that could get high profile. Hulk Hogan involved, get these big names in there, bring a spotlight on the administration. And that spotlight went in the wrong direction, went sour. So, but
yeah, it didn't help Hogan in any of it. But
no,
Hogan knew better even go on that show. He shouldn't have went on the show. He shouldn't have went on Arsenio.
That's true.
Or just say,
I didn't know about that. I didn't know about the Arsenio Hall.
We're going to do the show. It's WWF's holding handling it. They say, look, don't answer the question if he asks it. And they tell Arsenio up front, look, if you ask him the question, we're never putting any more of our guys on your show.
Arsenio asked.
And
just like any interviewers, they can't resist. Got to go for it. And then Hogan answered in the worst possible way available. I mean, it was just, there was not, I don't know what would be a more condemning response.
The best thing he should have said is, I've used them in my career, but I'm not using them anymore.
That's all he had to say. Exactly. I was about to say, that's all he had to say. And then to say, okay, moving on.
And they can say, well, when did you stop? And just say, I'm not really sure, but...
Not really sure, but I'm not using it anymore.
I'm not using it currently.
That's done. Yeah.
And then say, brother, I'm here to talk about the pay-per-view. I mean, Hogan knows how to handle things.
Yeah. It's not like he hasn't done his fair share of interviews before.
He's full of more shit than a Thanksgiving turkey. He knows what he's saying. Anybody's watched this dumb show.
Okay. No. So you're not a Hogan Knows Best fan?
No.
Hogan does not know best. Okay.
I'm not a Hulkster fan.
Okay. We should talk about this sometime. Seems like you got more to say about him. But
I'll give him credit for getting everybody back into wrestling in 1996. I mean, it was marvelous. Heel turn. Perfect. That's probably the most honest thing he ever said. He said, the trash in this ring represents the people in the crowd. I mean, beautiful. And that's...
Yeah.
People talk about the best promos of all time. I mean,
that's one of them.
I don't see how you can't say that's not one of them. It wasn't just him dropping the leg on Savage. When he said that, man, that was powerful stuff.
Yeah, yes, it was.
And pretty honest, I think.
Yeah. But, all right then. All right, so there it is. There's season 3. We're done talking about Dark Side of the Ring. If there's a season 4, we'll come back and do that. And maybe, again, we'll have to talk about some more wrestling because of all the new, or weeks ago, the wrestling news about all the releases and stuff, kind of adding to your story that
they're getting it ready. 2023.
There it is.
There's their target date.
Heard it here first.
Yep.
All right, folks. We'll see you later on Princes of the Universe.